So there are 4 factors that go into being resilient. You see these people, they write books on resilience and they're like, it's about getting up after you get knocked down. And yes, that is 1,000% what resilience is. But how? How do I become resilient? So first, it's experience. But there's 4 key factors. Factor number 1 is having a positive mindset. Like, it's okay, there's a positivity here, there's an energy. 2, optimism. And when we say optimism, we're thinking about future. So I'm positive about what's happening now. Like, this is cool. I'm thinking about how this is going to be cool in the future. Third is emotional regulation. So we're going to say EQ, right? So that's the whole adult. And then fourth is looking at failure as a positive thing to learn. If I could have those 4 things, this is what allows resilience to be developed, or me to be resilient. Then I can get up after being knocked down. Because I've got a positive mindset, I got knocked down. I'm not going to get knocked down in the future. All right, I'm going to regulate my sort of depression right now. It's not that bad. I'm not so much of a loser. It's okay. All right, I'm going to get myself into that adult. I'm going to be thinking about that objectivity. And then failure, but failure is a key component of learning. So it's failing in order to learn. And if I can live those principles, you'll end up being resilient. This is what I think there's a major problem in the world today, specifically with the younger sort of generations, which is this resistance to failing. Like, it's such a negative thing. I can't fail. And, I'm so hard on myself. And even not just the younger generation, some of you I've had this conversation with, which is like, there's this insecurity that kicks in here. And we got to flip that, right? We got to really sort of flip the script on that, which is, you all have kids, right? Remember when they're learning how to walk, right? They fall, right? And they get up, and they're all wobbly, and like their bones aren't really sort of too hard at that point. But in order to learn how to walk, you got to fall. Jordan Peterson, some of you know him, famous psychologist. There's this great he's quoted to say, and they've made a meme video out of it, which says one of the most important things you can do for your kids is let them fail safely, right? And then there's a video of a kid with a helmet on, and there's a goat, and he's about to headbutt the goat, but like the whole image is the kid's got a helmet on, and like, yes, he's going to get knocked over, but he's not going to do too much damage. And I'm actually going through this now with my kids, which is, as we're getting kids to share more stuff, the goal is one day they're teenagers, and when they do stupid shit, you want them to have a trusted relationship, that they're not going to get reprimanded and beaten when they're telling their parents about stuff. And it's an experience thing, it's like people need to have dozens of these neutral experiences with us in these moments, which then gets their brain to the point of, oh, this is safe. There's a psychological safety there. I think we just got to keep sort of chipping away. And when that thing does pop up, right, that's where the stop kicks in. Like, let me put on the good face. Let me encourage them and all that kind of good stuff. So yeah, it's tough. But there will always be that sometimes perception and sort of sense of security or self-preservation. It's that amygdala that's kicking in with people. And the truth to it is, like, the faster we get this stuff on the table, the faster we can figure it out, right? And 2 heads are better than 1. And, I think we got to remind people that it's not about going at things by themselves sometimes. Think about presentations. Like, if you want to be good at presenting, you've probably screwed up presenting a couple times, right? If you want to be really good at like your job, it's because you've made all the mistakes. In fact, if we might look at you as leaders in teaching, right? The reason you're good as leaders is because you fucked up everything that this person's about to do. You've made all the mistakes they're about to make. And your ability to mentor and to coach and to guide them to say, hey, by the way, this is why when you're using the system and you got to kick the machine twice on the left, this is why you got to do that, because you've experienced that, right? Customer service and account management, even more so. Like, listen, this is clients, and like, this is the approach you got to take, and this is why, because you've been there with that client, knowing what hasn't worked. I think there's many reasons that happens. It could be the analysis paralysis side, where one's over analytical. There's something called spiral thinking, which one thought leads into the next, into the next, into the next. So what starts out as like a potential fail, by the time we're done, it's like this massive, massive, massive thing. We also know the whole concept of perceptions equal fact. So if one perceives they're going to fail, that's their brain, that's what their reality is. For kids, I mean, I wish we had these answers, right? Like, we can do this. However, I think it does boil back down to the tools that we've actually gone through, right? the ability to articulate and communicate effectively, the ability to emotionally manage. One of the questions I like to use as a rite of passage with my team is, can I make a suggestion? Can I tell you what I would write or what I would put on the page? And then I tell them. One of my sales guys sending out this email, and I clued into it. I was like, oh, I mean, I wouldn't answer this email. And he said everything right, but it was just the way he was sort of communicating it. I said, look, can I tell you what I would change the email to? He said, sure. I said, I would remove this, I would make this, and I would say it in this way. Anyway, perfect. Changed it and he got an instant result. So that's part of performance coaching. You see, the challenge with coaching in general, traditional coaching, personal coaching, life coaching, is it is all based on this element that you are not allowed to give advice. You're not allowed to give direction. You're not allowed to give advice. You're not allowed to it's bullshit. Now, it's appropriate. I do coaching. You've been in coaching with me where I've done that, where I'm like, what do you think? And what do you want to do? And how do you, there's an element of that. But when we're trying to drive performance, I'm addressing attitude, skill, and knowledge. And I'm improving one of those areas, if not all three. And there's a level of direction that has to come in that. And that's through that critical parent or through that nurturing parent. Lots of questions, right? But I'm not going to sit down with this guy and say, well, how would you feel about like really being successful in your creative writing on the website? What would it look like for us to do millions of dollars through this web page? Right? And how do you feel about, doing some research? I think one of the things we got to be conscious of is that whole concept of listening, like how do we listen to people? And this is a little bit maybe of the minimizing listening, right? Which is for the kid, it's like the end of the world. But for us, we're going, hey, it's not a big deal. Take it easy. What's the worst that's going to happen? But their brain, and so it's not about minimizing that entire world. I think it is the whole concept around challenging perceptions. Because if we don't now challenge perceptions, and perceptions generated through my previous experiences and my emotions, in a lot of cases, if I'm not careful, this is what contributes to anxiety, right? People's over projection into the future because of their feelings or their experiences of the past. So part of what the stop concept actually allows us to go through is challenging our own perceptions about the scenario and gaining what we call perspective. The ultimate answer to emotional intelligence is being able to add in perspective. Can your kid look at the scenario, look at this opportunity through your lens? Because we all look at the perceptions of the way I look at things. Perspective is the way other people look at it. And what I'm trying to do through communication is get people to add to their perspective. So I think there's an adult-based question sort of approach there. I love the Dan Martell rule. We spoke about it when an employee or team member has a problem with you. Right? Instead of us launching in to solve it or not dealing with it at all, we say, all right, talk to me about what your problem is. So there's the debriefing. Right? Vomits out on the table. And we're not going to judge them. We're like, here he goes again. Right? Had this conversation 5 times with this person. We're not going to minimize. Just don't worry about it. It's fine. Emily, don't worry. Right? You'll hire someone who's fantastic. Right? Not the biggest deal. Right? Let's not problem solve, because that's when we're giving them the answers. And unfortunately, the faster we give them the answers, the more dependent they become. And then obviously not interrupting. And back to the Dan Martell rule, it's the 1-3-1 rule. 1-3-1 rule. What's your one problem? Like your kid's worried about X, Y, and Z. Okay, well, tell me what the one thing you're worried about. What's this? All right, well, what would be your 3 kind of ways of handling that? In business, we say, what are your 3 recommendations for this problem? All right. Hey, we got a client issue. Okay, well, tell me, what do you think the 3 answers or the 3 things we can do to resolve this issue is? All right. Oh, well, I guess we can, not refund them, not credit them, whatever, right? But we could say 1, 2, or 3. All right, out of those 3 recommendations, which one do you feel most confident about? Maybe that can also apply to kids. What are you really worried about failing? Okay, well, what are 3 ways you can maybe handle that? And we could do this. Okay, out of those 3, which one do you feel most confident about? It's very specific, the language. What's the one concern or the problem? What are your 3 recommendations? Not what are your 3 answers for that. It's a different type of question. What are your 3 recommendations? Starts to get people thinking about, I'm thinking, hey, let's go back to resilience, right? Maybe it's sort of addressing some of these things. And then out of those 3, which one do you feel most confident about? Okay, so let's talk about the value of coaching. What do you think the value of coaching is? We're improving talent, we're developing talent, we may say improving slash developing talent. Alignment, absolutely, right? We're all sort of marching in the same way. And remember we said objectives, they really come down to alignment and commitment. Maybe that's what coaching also gets us the opportunity to do, that we're aligned, we're marching in the same sort of direction, and I'm committed to improving, to growing, to learning, to executing, right? What else? Confidence improves, huge.